Alright, welcome back to Crabby. Today we're looking at the game The Networks, and the theme is pretty obvious, so we're going to be running our own TV station, alright, setting up our prime time channels. Alright, so this is going to be the setup and rules breakdown video. Click on the link below if you want to see my review and playthrough video. And 3 things before we start. Like usual, please like, subscribe, and comment on my YouTube channel. That would be fantastic. Let's go. Alright, so let's start with the setup. Now before I start, I will be setting this up with the advanced variant. There's only a couple of changes, one being the network cards right off the start of the game, and I like to play with them. Alright, so we're going to start off by taking our 3 game boards. Okay, you're going to have the left one and the middle one, which are pretty much going to be always used on the same side in a 3 to 5 player game. And the one on the right always changes according to the number of players, and you're going to see next to the red bar over here the number of players that this board is used for. Now to start off the game, you're always going to have it on the red side up, and at the end of the first round you're going to end up flipping it over, but leave it on this side. Alright, after that what you're going to do is you're going to go through all the season show decks and the star decks and remove the indicated number of players on the top left here. So if you're playing less than 4 players, you will need to remove some cards from the decks. Alright, let's just get this out of the way. Alright, and after that you're just going to set up your decks of cards. Alright, this is sort of a card game. You're going to have a lot of cards on the table, and what I love about this game is if you look on the right board here, it'll always tell you how many cards you need from each deck at the start of the round. Alright, so at the start of the first round you're going to see 4 stars, 3 network cards, 3 ads, and 5 shows. Alright, so let's get it done. So 4 of these. Alright, 3 ads, 3 network cards. I'm just going to move this deck over. And 5 shows. Now, for the season 1 cards, after you take out your 5 shows, you can pretty much toss the rest of them into the box because this is only used during round 1. 5. Let's get rid of this deck of cards. Let's put all these cards out in the tableau. Alright, so now the rest of the stuff for the board, besides the money, leave the money on the side of the board here. You're going to have your round tracker. It's a little pawn put on the number 1 for the first round of the game. Every player is going to put their 100 viewer chit on the middle board here. You're going to randomize who the first, second, third player is going to be. This is going to be simulating a 3-player game, so I put it out like this. Now that's going to be important because your money, starting money, is actually changes depending on which starting position you are in. So red's going to start with 5, green's going to start with 7, and blue's going to start with $9. After that, everyone's going to put their scoring marker on the 0 viewer space over here, and that's pretty much it for the main game board over here. Now for each player, they're going to get their game board here in their specific color. Now they're also going to get 5 starting cards, and you're going to tell by the back of the cards going to have their company logo on it. Alright, they're going to get a star and an ad. Just put those into the green room to start, and they're going to get 3 different shows. Put them randomly into the 8, 9, and 10 o'clock slot. This is the money that I already talked about before. I'm starting with $5, and each player is going to start with 4 cubes. Alright, 4 right now, just leave them on their player board here. I'm going to talk about how this works during the rules section. Alright, so that's pretty much the setup for the game. Let's go to rules. Alright, rules breakdown time here for the network. So at its core, this is pretty much a drafting / tableau building game. So mostly what you're going to be doing in this game is on your turn, grabbing a card, and that card's going to go in your tableau. So if it's a show, it's going to replace one of the shows in your tableau. And if it's an actor or an ad, you're pretty much going to place it in your green room to be placed on a show at a later point in the game. And pretty much that's what you're going to be doing. Now, how does the game flow? Well, you're going to have a turn order marker indicator here on the middle board. Alright, so when it's your turn, you get to take 1 card, and then it's going to jump onto the next player. Alright, so in this case, it would be red, takes a card, then green, then blue, and then you loop back around, and so on and so on and so on. Alright, now, when everyone passes, that's going to be the end of the round, and by passing, you're moving your marker over into the drop and budget section, but we'll talk about that much later in the video. Alright, and as you can see here on the left board, the game's going to last 5 rounds, which is basically 5 seasons, and you can see here by the season cards which deck you're actually going to be taking the cards from for that round. Alright, so these are all the season 1 cards. Alright, so how we're going to learn this game? Pretty simple. I'm going to go through the card anatomies, then we're going to go through the player actions, which are basically just going through the different cards and what they mean. And then we're going to talk about the maintenance phase, which is when everyone passes, we're going to be scoring our tableau, we're going to be resetting the main board here, changing the turn order, and so on and so on. And then at the end, we're going to talk about some end game scoring stuff, and you should get the gist of how to play after that. Alright, so let's get started. Alright, so there's 6 different actions a player can do on their turn, but 4 of those actions are associated to the 4 different card types in the display over here. Alright, and the reason why they're separated is because each card type works a little differently and there's different rules. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine the anatomy of the card with the action as we go along. Alright, so the first action a player can do on their turn is taking a star card. Now in this game, when cards are taken, you never refill the tableau. The cards are there for the round. Alright, so let's look at the anatomy of a star card. Alright, let's take 2 cards for example. Now the cost of taking the character is on the left of his name. Alright, so to get a career stuntman, it'll cost you $1 million. Or to get the popular but unpredictable legend, it'll cost you $5 million. And when you pay, you always pay the bank. Alright, on the right here, there might be a cost. This cost comes into play at the end of the season. If this actor is attached to a show, you're going to end up having to pay the actor. Okay, so that's what that number means. Alright, now whenever you take a star, very important rule, you never ever assign them to a show right away. They always go directly into your green room so that in a future turn you can then add them to a show or get a show and then you're going to attach it right away. We'll get to that in the next section. Alright, the only other thing to talk about on a star card here is at the bottom here, most of the time there's always some text. And this is going to tell you whether you're going to attach this star to a show on the colored side, which is the better side, or on the gray side, which is the sort of non-good side. Okay, so when you get a star card in the future, I'm going to show you this, but they're pretty much always going to be attached, like this, to a card. And this one says rotate unless the show is an action show, and this is not an action show, it's a comedy, so pretty much it'll be attached in this way. But let's say this was an action show, then it would be attached this way. We'll talk about this later when we talk about the show action. Alright, so the second action a player can do is taking an ad, and this is very similar to the star. Alright, when you take an ad, remember you never refill the display, so first come first serve. I'll take an ad, and again, never assign it to a show right away. It's going to go into your green room. Now the differences between an ad and a star is that an ad actually gives you money. Alright, so by taking the ad, you'll actually make money right away. So on the left here, it's going to give you an amount. You're going to take it from the general supply and add it to your personal supply. Alright, and just like a actor, the number on the right is going to be what this ad is going to give you if it's assigned to a show at the end of the season. Alright, so for example, let's say we have it like this at the end of the season. Well, now you're, instead of just losing $1 million at the end of the season, you're actually going to be making $1 million because 2 minus 1 is 1. Alright, the last thing to talk about for an ad is just like actors, just read the text at the bottom and you might have to rotate it. Alright, so for example, this thumb station here, you really want to attach this to a show that's on its preferred time slot, or you're going to be making no money for that show. Alright, so the third action a player can do is taking a network card, and these are like action cards that you can activate. Alright, so there are 4 different symbols to look at in the game. Alright, so let's start off with the exclamation point here. If you take a card with an exclamation point, you activate the card right away. You read the text, you do it, and then you'll discard the card. Now in this game, whenever you discard a card, just put it at the bottom of the deck so you don't have to create a discard pile. Alright, the 1x ones are very similar to the exclamation point, but you activate it whenever you want. Alright, so you keep this in front of you. In a future turn, you'll just discard this card and activate its ability. So it's a one time, but you get to decide when you want to play it. Alright, the infinity sign is pretty much a persistent bonus that you're going to get for the rest of the game. Just read the text. Whenever something happens, you'll get a benefit. Alright, and the last one is the arrow with the wall symbol here, and this is always endgame scoring. So you'll keep this in front of you, and during endgame scoring, there's pretty much a way to score extra points on the card. Alright, and just like all the other displays, whenever somebody takes a card from the network display, you don't refill the cards right away. Alright, so the fourth action a player can do on their turn is developing a show, which is taking one of the show cards. Now this is the most complicated out of all the card types. Alright, so let's look at the anatomy of a show card. Alright, so on the top here, you're going to have the name. On the left, you're going to have the cost to develop the show. You're going to have to pay the bank, so this one's going to be $1 million to the bank, and then you can take the show. In the top left here is the type of show that it is. So this is a comedy. I'm going to talk about this. Is very important when we talk about the genre bonuses later in the video. And below it here is the preferred time slot that the show wants to be slotted. Now that only comes into play during the first season that the show is on the air. As you can see here, if you slot it in correctly, you'll score the points or viewers on the left hand side, and if you didn't, well, then you'll get the viewers on the right hand side. And as you can see here, during seasons 2, 3, and 4, well, it doesn't really matter because there's no preferred time slot. It'll always be a standard number. Alright, now on the top right, there might be a cost. For example, like this one and this one. This is obviously when you score that show, you're going to have to pay to keep that show on the air. Alright, so this one, you're going to have to pay $1 million at the end of the season. Alright. On the bottom left here, this is the rerun. When it hits the rerun, when this gets canceled, you'll basically get those points one extra time. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And at the bottom here, very important, this is the requirement to attach this show to the time slot, let's just say. Alright, because shows work completely different than stars and ads. These go into the time slots right away. You can't store them. You don't have a hand. As soon as you take a show, you must slot it in. Alright, so I'm going to show you with an example. Let's just say I really wanted the awesome industrial accidents card here, and this one wants to go at 9 p.m. so maybe I'll slot it in at 9 p.m. and this one really needs an ad attached to this card. Alright, so what we're going to do is you're going to look at your tableau and you're going to figure out where you want to slot it in. So let's say I want to slot it in at 9 p.m. What I'm going to do is any show that was previously there, first of all, you take the cube, you add it back to your board, and you're going to take that card and add it to the reruns part of the board here. And then you're going to slot in your new show. Alright, after that, you're going to look at the requirement, like I mentioned, and if it requires something, you need to attach it right away. So this one requires an ad. I'm going to go get my ad. And I'm going to attach it to the show, as you can see, like this. Alright, and now because I, attached it on its preferred time slot, at the end of the round, I'm going to score the 11 points instead of the 8 points. Now, whenever you slot in a new show, you're going to take the cube that you just removed and you're going to always add it back to the top line where the eyeball is. This is pretty much indicating season 1, and during the maintenance phase, this is going to drop down, which is pretty much going to indicate seasons 2, 3, and 4 as the game goes on. Alright, and as you can see here, because there's an ad attached, well, now instead of paying $1, I'm going to get also $1, so this is going to net to $0 at the end of the season. Alright, now very important, like I mentioned, you must have the requirement. So let's say I were to add another show that needed an ad. Because I don't have an ad in my green room, I would not be able to take that show. For example, this one here, I would not be able to take the show and slot in at 10 p.m. because I don't have another ad to attach to this. What I might do is go grab an ad and then go grab the show afterwards. Alright, so let's look at the other symbols that are at the bottom of the card, because these are the requirements. Alright, so whenever you see a colored square, that means it is required and you must attach it. Alright, so for example here, this one needs an ad and you must attach an ad, and this one needs a star and you must attach a star. Now anything that's grayed out, it means it's optional. You could attach either a star or an ad, but you don't have to. So this one you can slot into your time slot without attaching anything, but in the future you could add a star or an ad. Now in the future, in seasons 2 and 3, obviously you'll get cards with more symbols. So let's say there's 3 symbols on here. Some of them might be colored, some of them might be grayed out. You must always attach what is colored to the card. Now another important rule is you can't just add extra stuff to a show that doesn't require it. So for example, this show only needs a star. Well, you can't add 2 stars, 3 stars, 2 ads. You can only attach to a show what's marked down. Alright, either as optional or required. And that's pretty much what's on a card. Alright, and now we're going to talk about the genre bonus, which is the last black section that you have down here on your player board. Alright, and this happens as soon as you develop the 3rd or 5th of the same type of show in your tableau. Alright, then you're going to get a bonus. So this includes all shows in your tableau, which means shows that are currently running, shows in reruns, and shows in archives. So let's say I had one sports show that's currently in my 8 o'clock slot, one sports show that's currently in my reruns, and one sports show that I had in my archives. Alright, then I'm going to get a genre bonus right away. Alright, it's sort of like a free action and something that you're going to get as a bonus. And it happens as soon as you take your 3rd or 5th of the same genre type. Alright, so essentially it is always going to happen when you do a develop show action. Alright, and what you're going to do is first you're going to gain 5 points. Alright, whether it's 3 or 5. Alright, now if it's a 3, which means 3 of the same type of show, you're going to choose from one of these two options. You're either going to draw 3 stars and you're going to keep one, and the 2 that you don't keep you're going to put back underneath the deck of the stars, or you're going to draw 3 ads, keep one. All right, either one that you take, remember the star, the ad is going to go into your green room. All right, but for the for the ad, the other 2 cards, you're going to actually calculate the total money on them, and you're going to gain that as income, and then you're going to put it underneath the deck of the ads. All right, now if it was the 5th type of a genre, all right, you have another 2 options. All right, again, you can choose from one of the first 2, or you can draw 3 network cards and keep one, and the 2 that you don't take go back underneath the network deck. All right, now if it was the 5th as well, you can exchange money for viewers. This is the only way in the game that money gets exchanged for points. All right, and the only way to do it is not an end game thing either, where you can exchange money to points. You can only do it when you have 5 of the same type of show, and you're basically exchanging at a rate of $4 million for 3 points, and you can do that as many times as you want. All right, so in this example here, you can exchange 4 for $3, or 8 for 6, or 12 for 9, for example, so on and so on and so on. All right, so when you get 3 or 5, you're going to look at this, you're going to do that right away, and then it'll move on to the next player. All right, so the 5th action is the attach action, and in the previous section I explained that, you know, when you add a show, well, if it's a requirement, you have to add the star or ad right away. But if it's grayed out, right, you don't need to attach a star or an ad right away, but you have the opportunity to do so in a later sort of action on that season or in a future season. All right, so for example, I'm going to explain all this with an example because it's easier that way. All right, so let's say I had this card in my tableau where I had developed this show. I'm going to add it to my tableau. So let's say for whatever reason I would add it to this slot right over here. All right, and then for some odd reason I had decided that I really want to add an ad to this show, but I don't have any ads in my green room. All right, so for example, I would add this in a previous turn. And then in a following turn, let's say I would have gotten this ad, and remember, when you get an ad, it always goes directly to your green room. All right, so that's not the attaching action just yet. And now I'm going to explain the attaching action as the 5th action. What you can do is you can take that ad and add it to a show that can take the ad, or an actor, or a show that can take an actor. All right, so you're basically attaching, taking a card from your green room and adding it to your show if that show can take a star or an actor. Star or an ad. All right, so for this example here, I added an ad to this show. All right, and the 6th action is the passing action, which in this game it's called the drop and budget action. All right, and it's pretty simple. What you're gonna do when you pass, you're pretty much gonna be out for the round. You're gonna take your marker from the turn order track here, and you're gonna add it to the drop and budget track. Obviously selecting the highest number available because it'll give you the most money from the bank. All right, so for example, if red was first to pass, they're going to put their marker on the 7. The next person to pass eventually would go on the 6, and then after that it would be the 5. All right, in future rounds though, because this is round 1, you actually have a choice between points and money. So let me flip this over just to give you an example. If it was the end of round 2, all right, when you pass, the first person to pass is either going to make 10 million or 5 points, which is viewers, and the second person to pass is going to make 6 million or 2 viewers, and then the last person to pass is going to get only 2 million. All right, so when you place it, you get to choose at that point which one you want. You either take money from the bank or move yourself up on the point track. All right, so when everyone's passed, you're going to go to the maintenance / end of season phase. All right, and you can pretty much all do this at the exact same time, and it's 4 steps that you're all going to follow. All right, so step 1 is either paying or receiving income for your shows. So you're going to look at your tableau of your 3 shows, and you're going to look at the top right of all your shows, and you're going to just calculate it. All right, so my middle show here nets to 0, my top show here is 0, but my bottom show here I actually gain $1 million. So whether you gain or lose money, you're going to either put money into the bank or you're going to take money. In this example, I would take $1 million and add it to my personal supply. All right, the second thing you're going to do is score your shows. All right, so this is the scoring bit of the game. All right, so what you're going to do is for all the 3 shows, you're going to score where the current cube is, all right, which basically means the current season of that show. All right, so let's all do this together. So this show here, because it's not in its preferred time slot, all right, it's going to score the lower number. So this is going to be 4 plus 1, so that's 5. For this show here, it is in its preferred time slot, so it's going to be 11. All right, so that's going to be 5 plus 11, that's going to be 16. And then this show here doesn't really matter the time slot. it's going to be another 10. So I'm going to gain 26 points in total. All right, that's what this track is for over here. Just FYI as a hint, during the round, what I would normally do is score my shows as I'm doing actions, so that when I finally hit this end of season, well, then I just have to look at what number I'm at instead of having to recalculate and wasting time while everyone's already scored, right? So in this scenario, I would already have had it at 26 or whatever. All right, you're also going to score what's only in your reruns. All right, you're going to look at currently the white bar here, and basically I'll score an extra 2, so I'm going to score 28 points in total. So maybe at the start of the round I would have had this on the 28th, wherever it is on the track. All right, and that's what you're going to do. You're going to take your marker and move it 28 points ahead, and points and viewership is pretty much the exact same thing. All right, so you're all going to do that. Let's say we ended up here for whatever reason. All right, step 3 is aging your shows. All right, this is a two-parter. What you're going to do is you're going to move all the black cubes down one space, which basically means you're aging your show. They're entering their next season. All right. All right. You're also going to move all your reruns into your archives. Now, we don't ever score the viewership for what's in your archives anymore. The only reason we keep these cards around is because if you do reach a 3 or a 5 of a specific type, you are going to get a genre bonus, and I'm going to talk about this in the next section, so don't worry about it. All right, and the fourth thing you're going to do is do a complete reset of the board. So you're going to remove all the cards. All right, so normally there would be obviously much less cards in the tableau ready for everyone. The cards that were not taken, just put them underneath the respective decks so you don't have to create discard piles. All right, and you're going to refill up the tableau. All right, so you're going to look at the top right card over here, and you're just going to follow it. So you're going to add 4 stars, 3 ads, 3 network cards, and 5 shows. And when you take shows, always follow the current round that you're in. Also, I did forget, as the refresh, you are going to move it up one more time. So now starting with round 2 and 3, you're going to take from this deck, and 4 and 5, you're going to take it from this deck. Alright, and the last thing you're going to do is figure out the new turn order. Alright, and this is not done using the drop and budget order. What you're actually going to do is look at the current score of the game, and you're going to set it up in reverse turn order according to the score. So in this scenario here, green would be first next turn, then it would be red, then it would be blue. So I would pretty much just move it like this. Now for any ties, I'll show you with an example. Let's say we were tied. Alright, ties are broken by the drop and pass action over here. So in this scenario here, it would be green going first, even though we're tied for last place. Because he dropped first, he would go first player. Then it would be red, and then it would be blue because they're in first place on the point track. Alright, and finally we're going to talk about endgame. So remember, at the end of round 5, you don't need to reset the board. Alright, you're going to go to endgame. You're going to move the marker to end, and you're going to score 3 more things. Alright, first, you're going to score your shows one last time, but you don't have to calculate income or anything. You just score the shows wherever the markers are at. Remember, you aged them at the end of round 5, so they would have all moved down one more time, and then you're going to score them again. So in this example here, I'm going to score 7 plus 4 plus 1, add that to my total. Next, you're going to go to your green room, and if you have any actors left, you're going to score 1 point per actor. And finally, you're going to score your end game bonus purple cards or network cards. All right, so you're going to look at the top right, and if there's an arrow with the wall symbol, these mean end of game scoring. You're going to read the text, calculate it, add it to your point score, and whoever has the most points after doing all that is going to win the game of the networks. One last thing I forgot to mention is whenever you cross 100 points, you're just going to take your 100 point chit. If you pass it again, change it to its 200 side, and if you manage to cross 300, then you're going to get the 300 point marker there. Alright, there you go. So whoever has the most points is going to win the game. So click on the link below if you want to see my review and playthrough. Have a good one. Later.